Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's Weekly Notice with Andy Ngo. We are on episode 32, and today is the 10th of November. Thanks for joining me. Please leave your questions and comments for me throughout the live stream. I have a busy show for you today because it's on the heels of the elections, the American midterm elections, which, by the way, in a number of highly contested states, some of um, uh, the winners have not been determined. I'll talk about that. Um, well, first of all, I wanted to give a little bit of my political analysis. I don't do a lot of that, although hear from some of you that you appreciate it. But you can give me your feedback on here. So, well, the predicted or hopeful red wave didn't end up happening, and um, I think the biggest indictment from that is probably that the Maga brand and Trump is no longer salient to enough voters. So some of the um, candidates that were backed by Trump, such as Dr. Oz, who's running as a senator on the Republican ticket in Pennsylvania, he lost by quite a few percentage points to um, a Democrat candidate, Fetterman, who is literally mentally incapacitated because of a stroke that he suffered around 6 months ago. And I have a bit of knowledge about strokes because of um, it runs in my family. And typically, people who recover from strokes reach their baseline maximum recovery around 6 months, which is a bit more than where Fetterman's at. And from there, that's kind of like where they settle at and will remain roughly at for the remainder. Uh, Strokes, for those who don't know, is where um, a vein in the brain breaks and causes bleeding. And when that blood seeps out into the brain, the tissue where the blood is damaged. And so you can easily die from strokes. You lose mobility in parts of your body. Some of the symptoms are like part of the face will become um, like numb, not numb. It's the person suffering the stroke cannot move part of the face. The speech will slur. So it's very sad for what Fetterman is suffering through, but nonetheless, that was a candidate that the Democrats put through, and the voters of Pennsylvania picked. Those other ones on the MAGA ticket, I'm trying to think. So in Arizona, which there are still many, many ballots that are uncounted, and it's a big mess there. That was already kind of predicted before the election, anyways. Elections in Arizona are just run very poorly. And the person who oversees the election is the running for the governor on the Democrat ticket, and she's running against Carrie Lake, the Republican. Carrie Lake is the former broadcast television journalist who is a very big MAGA firebrand type person. The last I checked on the numbers, it was basically 50-50. And so it's obviously still too close to call. We're more than 48 hours now um, since the election, and we still don't know. But even in, let's say, the best scenario, Carrie Lake wins, let's say at 50% plus one vote, that she doesn't go in with the mandate, as governor of Arizona. And yeah, she'll have a tough 4 years as governors because there'll be a lot of opposition, I think, among Arizonans. Another one that's too close to call is in Denver, Representative Lauren Boebert, who's the Republican, big MAGA supporting woman. um, running against a Democrat, and that's basically 50-50 right now and still too close to call. So, yeah, I guess my analysis or the point I'm trying to take away is wait, one more thing. And obviously, as everyone knows by now, that Florida counted their votes very quickly and announced the numbers very quickly. Ron DeSantis won a second term quite decisively and crucially turned um, many urban voting areas red, which is no easy task. Um, and so that is, I mean, Florida is one place where Republicans did really well. And um, I guess my big takeaway, uh, in my view, from the midterm election is that the MAGA brand is so polarizing that it's um, actually really, really risky to have that be part of your brand as a Republican candidate, you know? Um, and even in places where you think it would, be a clear win, it hasn't been. It's been really close. So, I think this speaks on the legacy of Trump, and obviously a lot of the people who are tuning in are going to be either big fans of Trump or big, who have voted for him. And I think yeah, it's gonna be a difficult time moving forward for the GOP nationally to sort of find its footing on what party it wants to be in 2024. Um, it looks like the MAGA brand is one that um, is how you lose elections. It seems. I mean, but a lot can happen between now and 2024. We don't know. Trump has hit back at DeSantis a number of times in the last week in a move that's actually upset a lot of voters because DeSantis, even his opponents have to respect the fact that he's been able to govern very effectively as a conservative. And when I say conservative governance, that means being really unapologetic on these socially conservative views, which for a lot of um, what are called conservative parties in Western countries, you don't really see that. They are more so classically liberal in many ways. Um, I'm thinking about the Conservative Party in the UK, for example, or even much of the Republican Party. Before Trump came in, when it was the party of Romney or McCain, it's very much a classically liberal party, which means that it wouldn't do a lot of um, the things that the legislation that has passed in Florida, for example, like giving parents more rights over their children's education in a pushback against some of the trans and radical queer ideology in schools. That's explicitly a conservative agenda, for example. That is not classically liberal to do that. Um, and many other things, in opposition to CRT, obviously, is a conservative agenda. So um, uh, that's kind of at the national level. Um, things that are sort of takeaways from the midterms. I'm going to talk locally to the Pacific Northwest, which is where I'm most familiar with because that's my playground, if you will. Let me pull up some stuff. So, um, okay. So, well, in Oregon, let me just talk about Oregon a little bit. Uh, there was a lot of national attention on Oregon because some of the polling showed that it was neck and neck between the Republican candidate, a moderate Republican named Christine Drazen, and then the Democrat shoe-in, Tina Kotek, who is basically Governor Kate Brown 2.0, and whose accomplishments includes basically Kate Brown's legacy as well as writing in support of the 2020 BLM Antifa rioters, and whose top staffer was arrested at a Antifa riot in 2020 where firebombs were used that night in an attack on Portland police. Well, papers have called it for the Democrat Tina Kotek, who's running about has about 3 percentage points ahead of Christine Drazen, who's a Republican, the moderate Republican. If you look on the upper right here, I don't know if you can see, it's kind of small. Here we go. You see where it says 53.8%. That's how many votes have been counted. So there's almost 40% that has not been counted. However, the experts have called it for Tina Kotek because they say the remaining ballots are coming from essentially Democrat strongholds. So they don't think that Christine Drazen can close that gap. Tina Kotek on her social media has declared herself the winner and thanking people for her support. Tina is, well, here's the big thing about this election, the gubernatorial campaign in Oregon. The reason why there was national attention to it. So Oregon is a state that where there's a super Democrat majority. It's essentially a one-party state. Any legislative agenda that Democrats have is pushed through. It's pushed through, and the governor signs it. We've had the last time there was a Republican governor in the state of Oregon was nearly 40 years ago. So the fact that the Republican candidate came so close this year, both before the campaign and now during the midterm election, it was a big shock to a lot of people. And some miracle may happen. Who knows what the remaining 46%? They might prove the experts wrong. We'll see. But yeah, the newspapers have called it for Tina Kotek in Oregon. And then I'm going to talk about Joe Kent. So Joe Kent is somebody who is running for a congressional seat in Vancouver, Washington State. Vancouver is right over the river from Portland. It's basically a suburb of Portland, and it's a pretty conservative area, actually, and that's surprising for a lot of people, given that it's relatively, it's a neighbor to Portland. But that congressional seat covers a geographical area that's pretty large and includes some more rural areas out in southern Washington State. And so there, and Joe Kent, by the way, is somebody who's been very vocal about supporting Trump. And so his Democrat candidate, Marie Perez, her campaigning goal was to portray Joe Kent as far right and a threat to democracy. The Democrat talking points that we've all heard by now, right? Like, basically, if you don't vote for us, you're not supporting democracy. This could be, the election that ends all elections if the other side wins. Basically, in my view, very anti-democratic talking points. Actually, it is very dangerous and disturbing for Democrats to adopt a view that in the two-party system, that the other party is illegitimate and that any vote for them would be a vote for ending democracy. That's basically a Democrat talking point. It's bogus. They know it. They know that there's no agenda and no ability, actually, in the current legal framework for Republicans to dismantle all the checks and balances that exist for the two-party system. And but nonetheless, that is a talking point they've adopted, piggybacking off the 6th of January stuff. Yeah, so in Vancouver, Washington, that congressional seat for District 3, Marie Perez is at nearly 52% versus 47.4% for Joe Kent. This was a surprise for a lot of people because that area is quite heavily red. Um, and polling showed Kent ahead, quite comfortably ahead of Marie Perez. However, with that said, um, 221,000 votes have been counted, and there's still more than 100,000 votes to be counted. So this has not been called. Um, yeah, so this lead that Marie Perez has is could easily vanish because there's so many more votes to be counted in an area that is actually quite conservative. Um, Marie Perez, by the way, Breitbart did some reporting about how um, the auto body shop that she has in Portland, Oregon, with her husband had a post on its social media in 2020 where it expressed that it was going to provide aid to the rioters who brought the wind blowers to the riots to help blow away the tear gas so that their comrades could more easily break down the fence around the federal courthouse to storm it and to burn it down. So there is an extremism link to Democrat candidate Marie Perez. She, as far as I know, has not come out to apologize or to clarify on why her business was offering to help with that riotous activity, insurrection, I would say, against the federal government because it was an attack on the federal courthouse. And as far as I know, she hasn't been asked about it as well on the campaign. So, journalists are not particularly interested about that. So yes, the red wave did not happen. It was actually probably a pretty rough night, I would say. Overall, the midterms was a pretty rough time for Republicans, just because normally with midterms, the opposition party will be heavily advantaged, and then on top of that, we're economically at a time where um, a lot of Americans are dealing with difficulty in the current economic situation, which should benefit the opposition party, but the degree to that benefit has been actually much more mild than what was predicted. Um, however, in Portland, I want to talk about a election win that has really infuriated Antifa. Uh, okay. Yeah. So, a moderate Democrat named Renee Gonzalez, that's this man, has won the Portland City Council seat that was occupied by Joanne Hardesty, this woman. Um, he came out, I think, 7 or 8 percentage points ahead of Joanne Hardesty. And I've talked about his campaign a lot actually because it in some ways is it's significant in Portland because Joanne Hardesty was really the face of the abolish police in Portland, the one who spread Antifa propaganda from an official elected seat, who spread leftist conspiracy theories, lies about police during the riots. For example, she infamously said in an interview with Marie Claire that the Portland police were behind the arson attacks at the riots. And that was a lie. And when she was asked for evidence by the Portland police chief, Chuck Lavelle, who's a black man, she had none. And she actually, her office had to walk back her statements, which is quite rare for her because she says a lot of lies. When the riots first broke out and the mayor was out of town and she was placed in charge, she blamed the first really violent night of rioting in May 2020 on white supremacists and suggested that they were undercover white supremacists pretending to be Antifa during the rioting. She did successfully lead the effort in defunding the Portland police by millions. That has caused And we've seen now a big spike in violent criminality and homicides in Portland as a result. The police were later their budget was added back to basically where it was before. The damage was done because the police were delegitimized in Portland and demoralized, and officers do not want to apply for the Portland police. So even though she was a big defund police, abolish police person, she was caught in a scandal where it was revealed um, late in 2020 that she had called the cops on her Lyft driver because she was upset that the window was open. And the window was open at that time because the Lyft policy, which is given to users, that because of the pandemic, they're going to open and windows will be open for safety, for air circulation. And she said she was cold and she wanted the window closed. The driver wouldn't close it, so she called the cops. So she's also a hypocrite. She also has a very checkered past in that she has thousands and thousands in debt that she refused to pay to the bank, and they had to sue her, and she didn't even bother to go to the court this year when she was subpoenaed to. So there was a default judgment against her for ignoring the subpoena. And so Antifa have been very furious about Renee's election win. And this is one, Beatrix Li here, who's locked down her account. But look at her threat. Truly, whatever the hell we do, Gonzalez, and this is referring to Renee Gonzalez, who won the seat, will make you regret you ever ran. Reen for Portland, I hope you see this. Better block me. Yeah, I'm going to go back to Beatrix in a bit. I looked into her background. And of course, she was a campaigner for both Joanne Hardesty and, of course, Tina Kotek. You see that blue button on the bottom right? Okay. Yep. So that's, what that shows in Portland, by the way, is that the violent criminality, the homeless encampments have become so bad that even left-wing Portlanders are willing to vote for a moderate candidate. And the most radical ones actually have been voted out, actually, in the last few elections. So think about it. In 2020, we had Chloe Udally, who was basically a mirror of Joanne Hardesty, but in the form of a white woman. She was voted out. She lost. There was a moderate Democrat who replaced her. And when Ted Wheeler, which we know his record and what he's done to empower Antifa through his cowardice when he went into office in 2017, but he was seen as the moderate choice over the communist candidate Sarah Innerome. And he won over Sarah Innerome. Yeah. So, yeah, there's maybe a little change in Portland. There are a lot of moderates in Portland who worked really hard to help support Renee Gonzalez because they really saw him as kind of like the voice of reason. And if you've seen any of the debates that Renee Gonzalez did against Joanne Hardesty, you would probably agree. Joanne had really nasty personal attacks on him, such as in like a last ditch effort. Her campaign tweeted out from its official Twitter account that a vote for Renee Gonzalez was a vote for white supremacy. Renee Gonzalez is the son of Mexican immigrants. Joanne was not called out for that disgusting tweet by her campaign. Her campaign has also pressured Renee Gonzalez to disavow me, actually, because I've reported critically on Joanne and her record, and they take that as some type of official endorsement of Renee Gonzalez. To be clear, and for the record, I have, as a journalist, never endorsed any candidate. That's not my role to do that. So I would never tell people to vote for this person or vote for that, or that I am endorsing some candidate. It's not my role. Okay. Yeah. So For those who joined midway through because it got disconnected of the Wi-Fi issue, which hopefully is sorted now, please leave your questions and comments for me throughout this. I've been talking about the American midterm elections. So, and what would it be in Portland without violence from Antifa or threats of violence? Of course, it wouldn't be Portland then. What happened is on the midterm election night, Antifa announced a direct action. This one here, Antifa open house. This flyer is cropped, but you see on the picture, it's the window, the office of Rene Gonzalez smashed up, and below that it had the place and location for Antifa to meet, and the address. So the plan was to attack the campaign office on the election night of the midterms in an act of political violence, voter intimidation, I would say. But police were prepared because, well, I don't know. Maybe it's because Rene Gonzalez is a political candidate, but they were patrolling the streets and they made actually 3 arrests at night. So Antifa were there documenting it. PPB, that's Portland Police Bureau, seemed to be targeting, stalking, and attempting to arrest people tonight. Antifa wrote, 3 comrades arrested downtown. Check on your people and don't go out unless you have a support system in place, which is not to say don't go out, but rather to build a support system with your people. And Antifa ones, the other ones, maybe skip going to the park tonight. And the park is Szymanski Park, where Antifa had gathered to meet. And PDX Community Jail Support tweeted out, hello, it seems some of our friends were detained tonight. We're going to need jail support late and overnight at IJC, which stands for Injustice Center. That's their way of mocking the Justice Center. That's the building where the Central Police Station and the Sheriff's Office is, where people who are arrested in downtown are taken to. Bring a friend, bring coffee and cigs. We love you. PDX Community Jail Support is an Antifa auxiliary group. So they're the ones who have people who are there 24/7 when there are Antifa arrests. So during the riots in 2020, right outside the Central Police Station, they would occupy this area where there was a bench in front of the Starbucks, the same Starbucks that they would also smash up and destroy. And it's there where as soon as somebody is let out of jail, they're given all this help, a ride, information, often connections to where they, and also actually that PDX Community Jail Support will often be the ones who will help with the bailing out of the riot suspects as well. And here's the video of outside the campaign officer, Rene Gonzalez, and you can see there's Antifa there confronting the Portland police.
All skinny or what? If they do anything, we'll arrest them. Let's go. Fuck you! Fuck you! We're having the innocence and some juvenile dirty boy. Get the fuck out of here. Fuck yourself. Fuck you. I got a fucking citation for jaywalking.
Jaywalking? This is not even
Get your ass in your fucking car.
You
said you were gonna public fucking sidewalk.
You said you're gonna
You hit his fucking top that I've ever seen in my life. Let me just take a moment.
Cut that shit. No, that's not a man bun, is it?
Get the fuck back in your car, you fucking piece of shit! Get the fuck back in your car!
Do you have an earring? Oh no! Oh no!
Get the fuck out of here!
That's not John Oliphant, is it?
It is.
You look funny. Are you feeling good?
Get the fuck back in your car, you stupid fuck!
You down?
Fuck you!
You go down that easy?
Up right away and watch the video.
Yeah, everybody saw it. Yeah, fuck you. It's just like
You were crying. And now you have a man bun for jaywalking.
Wow! Wow! Fuck you, bitch!
No, for real. All this shit.
Yeah, so that just goes on and on, but that's the Antifa antics, you know, when they know that they can harass and intimidate police and the public like that. And well, here, there were too many police, so they weren't violent. But they would be, if the police went there, they would do all that, plus bash you on the head. So there were 3 arrests that night, and I found out who they were, of course. And unsurprisingly, the apparent ringleader of that is somebody who's been arrested previously. Let me pull that up. So that is Jared Bailey Huber. He's a 23-year-old Portland Antifa member, and this is from a photo from a prior arrest last year before the mugshot release ban went into effect this year. But he has open felony cases related to arson and rioting last year, and in spite of that, he allegedly returned and was a part of a cell of Antifa members in Black Bloc who were moving blockage into the street to disrupt the traffic. And they were pushing allegedly dumpsters into the street to block the cars from being able to go through, to stop police from responding, and also likely to start fires as well. So Jared Huber, and I have some more pictures of him, by the way. So this was one of the Twitter accounts from another Antifa member in Portland who was promoting the riot, but I'll just read it. Promoting this only, not personally planning on going, as I am awaiting on an equipment delivery tomorrow and its subsequent assembly. A little event happening tomorrow night. F. Renee Gonzalez, S word up. Also, Renee Gonzalez is smashed on site. So Antifa's policy is smash on site for Renee Gonzalez. Renee Gonzalez is a moderate city council candidate who won in Portland. Smash on site means if you see that person, beat them on the spot somehow, assault them. So Antifa openly incite violence on Twitter, of course. This is Jared Huber. So he's the Antifa member and a fake journalist who wears these press markings. This is him with Frank David Sensenbach, who's a BLM leader in Wisconsin who was arrested and charged with rape last year. This is hard for you to see, but these are some of the felony charges that he has in relation to another felony riot case, Antifa riot case from May of last year. So arson, criminal mischief in the first degree, felony, there's lots. And there were also 2 other Antifa members who were there that got arrested but were not booked into jail. So they were criminally cited and released on the spot. So that would be Margaret Rose Papp, 28 years old, transsexual Antifa member who is formerly known as Max Thorne Papp, and a third person named Derek A. Cooley, who's 32 years old. So it's really important for me to report out the prior names of the Antifa suspects because a lot of them change their names to hide their criminal histories. So a lot of them adopt monikers as well as new legal names. A lot of them claim to be trans. I think part of that is social contagion of the group. It's a political marker. And 2, I think there is probably a motive as well to try to run from the criminal history of who they were previously, which is why they make such a big fuss when people so-called dead name them, right? And they've been very effective in getting social media to abide by their censorship demands. Yeah. And also on the election night, there was a big, what is a hate crime hoax. There's a lot of those that happen in Portland and across America. I would say that's the real epidemic we deal with. I think for the number of people there are in the United States, the number of hate crimes are actually pretty low, um, given how diverse our society is and how divisive many activists are and are trying to divide people based on race and a number of other things. But and they do this often with hate crime hoaxes. So in this is on election night. So this group was one of many. So this is Oregon Walks, is a left wing campaign to encourage people to walk in Portland. Sounds nice, sounds like it should be apolitical, right? But they put out this thing that they said it's unfortunate that we have to share a message like this on election day. Please be safe tonight and share with your networks. And the letter that they wrote says at least 2 Black-led orgs in Portland received emails threatening election day violence from a self-described white supremacist group. Threats included shooting at local businesses in Southeast Portland and targeting Black people. So there's been a number of hate crime hoaxes in Portland before. Back in 2019, I reported on how there were claims that Proud Boys were going around in red trucks and killing people. Of course, the dead people never materialized, but nonetheless, the claims became a true panic. Like the mayor even had addressed that there were emergency meetings in Portland, and there was no evidence ever that any violence like that happened. And the people who made the claims, well, one, when I looked at the police report, this trans activist, that's not what she told the police about her being bashed on the head by the bat with the bat by transphobic people. But she had this very elaborate story in a GoFundMe campaign and made lots and lots of money from gullible white leftists in Portland and beyond. And there was another lesbian couple who made some outrageous claims about white supremacists hurling a beer can at her face, and said that it was reported to police when it wasn't, actually. And then when reached for comment, wouldn't respond. Yeah, you can look up that story. It's on New York Post back in 2018 if you Google my name. Anyways, so this is kind of a similar hoax that happened. So this email was sent to several racial activists, left-wing race activists in Portland. I'm going to read part of it. I had to censor a lot of it. But yeah, like people actually believe this is real in Portland. So this is the email. Quote, our white supremacist group is planning a shooting at Porque No Tequila on election night in the Hawthorne district, including the Hawthorne Theater, Mud Bay, Grand, Central Bakery, Safeway, Powell's Books, Fat Straw, and New Seasons. We know you guys helped BLM steal the election to kick Trump out of office because of George Floyd and his family. Damn N-words. Glad that demon was killed by Derek Chauvin. Our group is planning some other events that night too, like killing some murder-hungry N-words in North Portland, including shootings at the Baghdad Theater and other places in the Hawthorne district. Before I forget, this is a political attack, like what happened to Paul Pelosi recently. So this is an outrageous letter. It's written exactly how you would expect a white leftist or some leftist activist to write a letter, thinking of like this is how neo-Nazis talk. So if you look at the court evidence of far-right neo-Nazi groups that are actually prosecuted for making death threats and threats of violence that are racially motivated or hate motivated somehow, you can see that they don't talk like this. This is how somebody writes a bad script to some leftist show. It would be written like this, But yeah, the left in Portland have kept Portlanders stupid and other people stupid as well, that they're not able to discern. So I don't see what use it was for left-wing groups to spread all of this around to make people fearful on election day. By the way, there was no mass shooting on election night in any of those areas in Southeast Portland. Okay. So normally the shows ends at 8 p.m. Eastern time, but because there was the the connection issues, I'm gonna go later, of course, because I owe you all that 1 hour. Let's see. Oh yeah. Please still send in your questions and comments. I do want to get to that. There probably aren't very many, but I like reading what you have to say. So um, here's a story, an investigation that I've been working on that I've have tweeted out now. So earlier, I showed you these tweets from this Antifa member in Portland named Beatrix Li, and she's threatening Renee Gonzalez. Truly, whatever the hell we do, Gonzalez will make you regret you ever ran. Hope you see this. Better block me. So she's sending the threat directly to him. She's locked down her account. That's this person here. Um, and if you look at all the stickers on it, you can see, well, this text on the bottom is a communist reading that she's doing. Ask me about prison abolition, um, and all these other far left things, no cops. And she's a far left violent extremist. There's a number of posts in her history, which she's trying to hide the evidence of now, where she's calling for political violence and even suggesting a murderous violent campaign like this one. Hear me out. We don't need reproductive rights if we kill all men. And this person, unsurprisingly, has also celebrated the violent attack by a mob of Black Bloc militants, likely to be Antifa, on the Bison coffee house in Portland. I talked about that a few weeks ago, how a indigenous-owned coffee house in Portland had all the windows smashed out by 6 people, head to toe in black, and they sprayed all this paint stuff inside to destroy the interior as well. And it was in retaliation for the cafe hosting a coffee with a copy event, which is a community event so that community people can talk one-on-one with police officers and get to know who's actually patrolling the streets. Um, so yeah, Beatrix wrote, I don't regret what I said. Also, good job to those who smashed windows. I'm proud of you. Coffee with a cop should not ever happen. So this is their thuggery fully on display. And I've been tracking this account for a while. The Twitter name is at Abolition Babe. And look, here's Beatrix Li here with she photographs herself wearing this shirt that says F Andino, anti-fascist action. And it's a outline of normally the graphic is a person throwing a firebomb. Here it's replaced with like a cup with a drink straw in it, and what it represents actually is it's pretty sick. So when I was in 2019, you've probably seen the pictures of where I'm covered head to toe in the milkshakes, all that white stuff. And it's all over my face, and people will reference that on the left and say, "Andy was just hit with milkshake. What's the problem? That's not an assault." What they intentionally leave out is before the shakes that were hurled in my face, a mob of them kicked and beat me on the head to the point where I developed a brain bleed and nearly died in hospital. I was taken to hospital soon after those pictures were taken where you see all that white stuff is on me. And then the mob of Antifa threw, in a coordinated fashion, their drinks directly in my eyes to blind me and to humiliate me. And I think there's probably some racial undertones to that as well. Historically, racist groups have used throwing food at various targets to humiliate them. And I think, you can think of like what happened to those during the civil rights movement in the cafes, who were protesting peacefully, demanding that they be served, and the people responding would dump all this food and stuff all over them to humiliate them. So I think there was probably racial tones to that attack, but this person, Beatrix Li, wants to celebrate that type of attack. on a journalist. And well, here's what I found out. Well, she works at the Oregon Justice Resource Center, and here's the post where she shows off her little desk with a violent image of a cop car getting destroyed. Um, the Oregon Justice Resource Center is a far left Antifa group in Portland. It's a legal group that provides aid to far left violent extremists. They have a lot of money, a lot of donors who come in, and they employ a lot of they employ left wing lawyers whose goals is to sabotage and make it so that the criminal justice system cannot happen. And so um, the thing with Oregon Justice Resource Center is, even though it has a very radical extremist agenda, back in 2019, Ted Wheeler, who's the police chief, um, and then police chief Danielle Outlaw had used the Oregon Justice Resource Center to help train the Portland police on how to identify white supremacy. This is back in 2019. And also CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, was also helped with that, as well as Western States Center. Now, CARE is a group accused of being linked to terrorism. They've been linked to terrorism in numerous investigations in the US and also in the Middle East. Various governments have accused them of being connected to terrorism due to them being an Islamist group. Western State Center is a far left SPLC style hate watch group that is just a leftist group um, under a different name, radical leftist group. So yeah, the Oregon Justice Resource Center, who she works for, had provided training to the Portland police. Here's the other thing I found out. So the NFL, you may remember the reporting on Fox Business that NFL is funding far left groups through its Inspire Change program. Well, one of the recipients of NFL money to the tune of $300,000 was the Oregon Justice Resource Center in Portland, an Antifa group. Additionally, they had also requested that the state give them $800,000. And well, Oregon lawmakers approved it in HB 4050. Democrat lawmakers gave the Oregon Justice Resource Centers $800,000 of taxpayer money to contract them for various work. So, yeah, when people ask me where do Antifa get their money from? Well, one of their ways is through things like this, through laundering a certain reputation through some type of charity organization or nonprofit organization that then requests grant money from groups like the NFL or other corporations, as well pay money when all the people behind it are those who are, well, and so Beatrix Li seems to suggest calling for people to be killed and expressing support on violent hate crime attacks on people. Okay. I want to talk more about one last Antifa story before I get to the questions and comments. It's a bit of good news. So my former colleague John Kay, when I was at Quillette, he was one of the editors. I was a sub editor there. I worked with him a lot. Great guy, great journalist, Canadian journalist. He and his mother's also a journalist, by the way, were sued for defamation by the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, which is a sort of, as you can tell by the name, a self-styled sort of SPLC style group in Canada. It's a leftist group, and what Jonathan Kay and his mother had reported out is that the group has links to violent Antifa, and the group sued these two for defamation in a process that stretched out for more than 3 years. The lawsuit was filed in 2019, and it was meant to financially cripple and intimidate the two for speaking out. Well, that case was dismissed today at trial, 6-day trial. So the judge looked at the evidence and this is Jonathan K's tweet. In 2019, I was sued for libel by a director of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, which, by the way, gets taxpayer money in Canada. He claimed Barbara Kay and I linked them to violent Antifa. Judgment released today. Claim dismissed. Judge. The Canadian Anti-Hate Network does assist Antifa. The Canadian Anti-Hate Network director has used courts to stifle detractors. So a lot of what Antifa do, because they have a lot of money through these groups, is they engage. This is called lawfare. Lawfare. It's a term used where people file lawsuits to destroy or severely damage or limit their opposition in some way. You might remember that last year, about a year ago, it was in, I think, November of 2021, there was a federal lawsuit that was filed against me by two Antifa members in Portland. And their claim, believe it or not, literally was that I had violated their copyrights by when I retweeted their video on Twitter, like retweeted them, video retweeted them. They said that was a violation of their rights. They wanted hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages. Well, the case was completely frivolous. They withdrew it after 9 or 8 days, I believe it was. But it did generate a lot of headlines that were meant to damage my reputation. All the left-wing journalists jumped right on it. Andy Ngo sued by journalists for stealing their work. And, I, throughout reporting, covered how at least one of the two of these Antifa members had expressed all the support for political violence. And so it's just, yeah. Anyways, congratulations to John Kay for finally getting that case dismissed. I mean, yeah, lawsuits being, stretched out for years like that takes a lot of money, and I hope he recoup his costs. And already the Canadian Anti-Hate Network is already asking for donors to give them money. I wonder what for. Okay, I'm going to get to your questions and comments. Let's see. You can still send them in, by the way. So this was midterm election episode with a interruption early on. Sorry about that. Wi-Fi error. Okay. Okay, Hocus Pocus asks, what type of voter went for Betsy Johnson over Kotek and Drazen? I see the vote was split there. Yes, I failed to talk about Betsy Johnson. She ran a very powerful campaign. She was the independent gubernatorial candidate in Portland who a number of weeks ago was polling at almost 20%, and that really scared Democrats. Betsy Johnson was somebody who was fed up with the Democrat Party and left it and became independent. She's not conservative, so she didn't join the Republican Party. But she ran a very effective campaign saying basically restore sanity to Oregon, because some of the S word that happens in Oregon is insane with some of the people we have in leadership. It's just, this is a problem that develops when there's one, bad governance, and two, a one party type state. There's no check on the agenda of those who have the super majority in the power, and they just push through, and there's no need for moderation or compromise or anything. And that's part of why things are so dire in Portland. But what type of voter went for Betsy Johnson? I believe the voter was more likely to be Democrat who voted for Betsy Johnson. So Betsy Johnson was attacked a lot by left-wing people in Portland and Democrats by saying that she was taking votes away from Tina Kotek, and that a Republican might win for governor. That would be Christine Drazen. Christine Drazen is somebody who's entirely super moderate. It doesn't compromise on her principles. For example, she was very unapologetic about her personal views that she's a pro-life woman. And I think actually that is extremely brave to say in the state of Oregon, where written into the legislation is a protection for abortion with absolutely no limits, meaning you could get an abortion up to, well, basically the moment just before the child passes through the vagina. That's the law in Oregon. And I'm talked about how some of the Antifa people have boasted about their own late term abortions in very graphic detail. But yeah, but still, Christine Drazen said that was her personal view, but she would uphold the law, and the law is the way it is in Oregon, and abortion is protected. Um, yeah, and the Democrats tried to paint Drazen as some crazy MAGA brand person when she was not. She's always kept a distance from the populist right wing of the Republican Party. Okay. Um, Teps asks, when are we going to see a committee to investigate crimes committed by BLM Antifa? Well, if that red wave had happened, we might have seen something like that in Congress, some congressional committee investigating. But, even if that had happened, I don't think this investigation would have been really helpful for anything. Those type of investigations, like the January 6th committee, it's made for TV essentially, and it's made for political talking points. And so, you can have so-called witnesses who will present essentially fake evidence, like hearsay. And, like some of the witnesses that testified said things that were like completely debunked by other people. Like they would put on the record hearsay, said, I heard from somebody that Trump tried to take the steering wheel to drive to the Capitol himself. Like, that's not admissible in, an actual court, but like on the sort of TV committees. So anyways, um yeah, we're, as long as the BLM Antifa thing is made as a partisan issue, it's any type of investigation is not going to be seen as legitimate. That's the unfortunate reality. I think, but even, yeah, and I'm not sure actually what Republicans can do, because I know there are Republican lawmakers who would really like to get to better understand how relatively small networks of people were able to carry out such violent insurrections across the United States and without consequence, and where their money came from, and why the few who were prosecuted were given such sweetheart resolution deals or had their cases dropped. There's a lot of people who wants to know why that happened. CV Sheikh asks, have any of Antifa been sued civilly? Yes, by me. In 2020, I filed a civil lawsuit against those who assaulted me in 2019. When I was beaten again in 2021, last year, the case was amended to add in more people. So that civil case, by the way, is still ongoing. It involves a lot of people, and lawsuits, unfortunately, take years. And the more defendants you have, the longer it takes, the more time and more money. If people want to read the lawsuit, by the way, you can. So if you go to andy-ngo.com, there's a section on the top where you can click that says lawsuit. You can read the lawsuit, you can find the latest status, and also how you can financially donate to the legal fund, which is run by the Center for American Liberty. That's the legal nonprofit started by Hamid Dillon, who is currently on the ground helping with the Kerry Lake campaign in Arizona, by the way. Branaha wrote, 80% of Trump's endorsements won. I think you're buying the leftist media narrative on this one. So for those who joined late, when I first started talking about the elections, I was saying that I think the MAGA brand is one that is not salient enough to enough voters. That is a very polarizing brand to run on and to attach your name to, and it's risky, politically risky. So I don't know if 80% of Trump's endorsements won, but I mean, in key ones where it was really, really, really important, like in Pennsylvania, um, well, that wasn't a win. And also, um, in others that have really latched onto the brand and message, such as Lauren Boebert, the congresswoman in Colorado, that's still like 50-50 right now, and the votes are like, you know, still being counted. It's very close. Carrie Lake, very close in Arizona, running for governor. My point with all that is that even if they do win the election, they're not going in with a overwhelming mandate. Whereas like DeSantis in Florida, his lead over the Democrat candidate is so large that it gives a certain morale and boost to really pursue that agenda. When you win on 50% plus one, it's quite a big uphill battle. And yeah, I think certainly I'm not you know political commentary and analysis is not my strength hold. I'm a journalist and reporter, but I was giving my opinion on how I observed this election midterm campaign. And certainly I haven't made up my mind on anything. I'm not the type to condemn forever any type of political message. And I mean, one thing that people might be surprised about me is there's a lot of messaging among Democrats that I find inspiring, although that's really overshadowed by the, in my view, very disgusting talking point that um, only voting for Democrats is voting for democracy. It's it's spitting on democracy, actually, what they're doing when they use that as a talking point. Um, okay, the show ran quite late. I'm gonna talk about, by the way, ways that you can follow up on my work. So I have a YouTube channel called Andy Ngo Live, and a lot of these shows, by the way, are now being uploaded on there. So this is her exclusive show live stream, but the older ones from prior dates will get re-uploaded on Andy Ngo Live. So just go to YouTube slash and look up Andy Ngo Live. You'll see it. In addition to the live stream episodes, you can see like some of my sit down interviews. I had some really interesting ones recently, like interviewed with a male to female detransitioner, a female to male detransitioner, the political director to Viktor Orban in Hungary. So a lot, these involve me like traveling physically and meeting people face to face. And yeah, so that's there. Um, I would also ask that if you can, to please consider supporting me by becoming a subscriber on my Patreon or my locals or my Subscribe Star. So if you go to my Linktree, which is my username is Andy Ngo, so Linktree/Andy Ngo, you can see all the links. This is also on my website, which I'll just go to so you can see. Actually, I think the easiest place to go to is probably andy-ngo.com. And at the top, you can see different sections. So you can see about my book, by the way, which is in a new Portuguese translation, by the way, in addition to French and Spanish. You can see my articles, videos, and then there's a section called Donate, where it lists all the places that you can give. So andy-ngo.com. Locals, Patreon, Subscribe Star, PayPal, Cash App, Venmo. The support, I don't like talking about all the time, but the truth is, in the type of freelance reporting that I do, there isn't the pay is not very good. And so I really depend on support from you all to continue going. And I'm quite prolific on Twitter, but one doesn't pull an income from Twitter. It's not like YouTube, where the more engagement you have, the more more people who read and share and engage with your tweets, that get some type of money off that. It doesn't work like that. It's not YouTube. And so yeah, I just hope that, I know it's difficult economic times for most people, But if you can and are able to support me at one of these places on my website, I would really appreciate that. I would have a lot of gratitude. Thank you for joining Weekly Notice today, and I look forward to seeing you next week at 7 p.m. on Thursday